It also seems we cannot generalize. We cannot say all narcissists are likely to have sexual dysfunction. It depends crucially on which type of narcissist and which elements of narcissism and even which elements of a dark triad personality are emphasized. Some types of dark triad personalities are actually less likely than to have erectile dysfunction than the general population. And some types are more likely. Some types of narcissists are less likely, others are more likely. All in all, if we had to generalize, I would say that covert narcissists are more likely to experience sexual dysfunction, including erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and general impotence, and that it is somehow related to a state of collapse, a state of distress, and therefore may be a depressive artifact. It may be an indication of underlying depression. All in all narcissists, overt and covert, all narcissists suffer from the same set of problems. Autoerotism, which does not allow them to focus on the other as a true and proper three-dimensional sexual partner. A fear of intimacy, because intimacy is a level playing field and annihilates or undermines the narcissist's sense of superiority. The need to treat the partner as equal in a reciprocal and emotionally involved and invested and committed relationship. All these are anathema to the narcissist. All these negate narcissism. All these elements of intimacy, elements of relationships, all these actually challenge the narcissist's self-concept, force the narcissist to confront reality about himself and about others, reduce the narcissist to the level that he has to negotiate and compromise with his sexual partner as an equal. And so narcissists would rather limit themselves to objectifying sex, aggressive sex, although never coercive. Coercion is extremely rare because the narcissist needs to feel desirable and irresistible. So the sex is consensual and even enthusiastically consensual, but it involves aggression and it involves the degradation of the partner, the reduction of the partner to an aid to masturbation, an instrument, a tool, and ultimately the narcissist reverts to himself. He or she is the only sexual object. Masturbation is the only real sex. When the narcissist is forced by circumstances or by the demands of the partner to confront an actual sexual situation, the likelihood of erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation is higher than in the general population, again, critically dependent on the specific type or profile of the narcissist and or the dark personality. But if we were to generalize, one could say that a narcissist who is confronted with reciprocal, mature sexuality and the demand for intimacy or the need for intimacy and the evolution of a cathected, committed relationship, narcissists would react with panic because this is a direct undermining and challenging of the narcissist's grandiose, inflated, fantastic self-concept as above it all, as non-human, as godlike, and as superior to his or her partner. This cannot be tolerated. The narcissist sabotages the sex, withdraws, avoids sexual situations which are intimate by physiologically evading the sin, evacuating the sin physiologically. Erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and impotence are ways of somatizing the narcissist's aversion to equality, consensus, and reciprocity. It is the body that keeps the score, and it is the narcissist's body that says, I'm out of here. This is not for me. Bye-bye. What topic is more appropriate to discuss when you are in Paris than sex? This is the topic of today's video. the impotent narcissist with erectile dysfunction and other major sexual problems. My name is Sam Baknin. I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm a professor of psychology, and no, don't ask me. I know you're going to ask, but don't. Just don't. Here we go. Let us discuss aspects of the narcissist's sexual dysfunction. Various studies have demonstrated conclusively that pathological narcissism is associated with, surprise, surprise, sexual entitlement, the degradation, the sexual degradation, or even sadistic degradation of the sexual partner, although consensual, and aggression, sexual aggression. Pathological narcissism is not associated with any type of coercion. It's all consensual, and the partner is involved, sometimes enthusiastically. Pathological narcissism is the opposite of sexual coercion because the narcissist needs to feel irresistibly desirable. Raping someone is not exactly proof of desirability or irresistibility. So that's not what narcissists do. This is what sexual sadists do. This is what psychopaths do. But narcissists are entitled. They are aggressive. They are assertive when expressing their sexual wishes and demands, and they tend to degrade the sexual partner in a variety of ways, for asking her to have sex with others, or using her body to masturbate with, and so on. So this is the general overview. The problem starts when the relationship progresses and there is the specter of true intimacy. There is a firm demand for reciprocity. At that point, the narcissists feel shoehorned. They feel coerced. They feel even abused. And some narcissists react or experience erectile dysfunction, ED, or premature ejaculation. Whenever narcissists are confronted with the blossoming of the relationship into something more normal, more average, more common, it negates the sense of uniqueness, specialness, and it undermines their grandiosity and sense of superiority. At that point, the narcissist withdraws mentally, but also bodily. This is expressed via impotence. Such non-virile malfunctions are the discernible outcomes of performance anxiety and the challenge to grandiosity that is engendered by an equal partner, the equality of the partner. It's the egalitarian state, negotiated, compromised, the need to pay attention to the partner's wishes, sexual wishes, desires, and preferences. All these remind the narcissist that between the sheets, we're all the same. And nothing terrifies a narcissist than being the same as other people. Narcissists perceive themselves as godlike, elevated, superior. Their supremacy is one of the main pillars of their inflated, fantastic, unrealistic, grandiose self-concept. And so, while in a relationship, the narcissist is capable of engaging in sex, especially if the sex is entitled, aggressive, degrading, and as long as consensus and as long as consent is reached, as long as the partner willingly and sometimes enthusiastically participates in the game, that gives the narcissist the feeling that he is supreme, that he is unique, that he is irresistible, that he is desirable, that he is at the sexual apex. But the minute the partner begins to display signs of independence, sexual autonomy, preferences, the minute she makes demands or requests, the minute she expresses wishes or even disappointment, at that moment, the narcissist is turned off. He switches himself off. Don't forget that narcissism involves autoerotism. I'll talk about it in a minute. But the narcissist's main sexual attraction is to himself or to herself. The narcissist is his or her main and only sexual object. At the same time, the narcissist expects his partner to be awed, inspired, entertained, irresistibly attracted by the narcissist's impersonal performance in other settings, such as the workplace. And so there's a vicarious courtship going on, vicarious flirting, wooing by proxy. The narcissist displays his feathers like a peacock, his flashy car, his income, his standing in the workplace, his status symbols. And this is a non-romantic shortcut in lieu of true attentiveness to the partner. The same applies in bed. Once a narcissist has entered the sexual situation, once the narcissist is forced to act sexually, at that point the narcissist wishes to maintain this air of supremacy. The narcissist wishes to objectify the partner so that she recognizes the narcissist's ascendance over her and the narcissist's superiority and succumbs and plays the sexual slave. Spending time with a woman, in case the narcissist is a heterosexual male, spending time with a man if the narcissist is a heterosexual woman, and it applies to same-sex relationships. Spending time with the opposite sex or the same sex in a sexual relationship, which is transforming into a romantic relationship. Investing, persisting, intimacy, succor in a budding relationship, all bore the narcissist to tears, because he has to feign interest in another person, essentially a prop and a mute witness to the narcissist's grandeur. No one can conceivably be as interesting as the narcissist. No one is as desirable, as irresistible, as breathtaking, as fascinating, as amazing as the narcissist, and therefore no one deserves any cathexis, emotional investment, or any other type of investment, I mean psychological investment, coming to think of it. The narcissist wishes to limit himself and restrict himself to the sexual act. The narcissist does not bargain or did not bargain for anything more than that. And when the partner tries to level the playing field, when the partner demands reciprocity, when the partner insists on investment and commitment, cathexis, emotional energy, when the partner hunts for signs of interest and attentiveness and compassion, at that point, the narcissist perceives the partner as a competitor. She is never allowed to steal his thunder, to be in the limelight, center of attention and focus of his energy. So there are competing undercurrents whenever a narcissist engages in sex. Because on the other hand, he can use the partner's body to masturbate with and gratify his or her autoerotism. But on the other hand, there's a price to pay for sex, because in many cases it leads to emotional involvement on the part of the partner, and then she becomes demanding or he becomes demanding, and then there are expectations of reciprocity and investment and commitment, and the narcissist is not ready for any of these. Even when the narcissist acts the infatuated, even when the narcissist claims to be in love, even when the narcissist immediately transitions to offerings of marriage and sharing a living space and having children together and so on and so forth, this has nothing to do with the partner. This is about the narcissist's fantasy of what a family should be like and how to prove himself normal, first and foremost, to himself. So all this has a massive impact on sexual performance, obviously. The core problem in erectile dysfunction, impotence, and premature ejaculation, the key factor, the key determinant is psychological, not physiological. There's a small minority of people whose problem is physiological, but the majority is a psychological issue. If the narcissist perceives sex as threatening, if the narcissist regards sex as the path to conflict with a demanding partner, if the narcissist begins to view sex as degrading to himself, as negating his own grandiosity and superiority and godlike supremacy, at that point, sex becomes a no-no, a no-go zone or a battle zone. And of course, the narcissist's sexual performance deteriorates dramatically. Narcissistic sex, unfortunately, is becoming the prevalent form of mating in our contemporary dystopia of casual, anonymous, animalistic romps. Even when technically accomplished, the sex is either mechanical, clinical, perfunctory, or pyrotechnic and competitive. It is a spectacular decoupling of sex from any emotion, and of courtship from copulation. Sex now, contemporary sex, is a form of ritualized rape, in effect, or at best, mutual masturbation. It involves only power and self-gratification. As gender roles are gone, and everyone emulate and imitate, psychopaths and narcissists, unisex and unigender, are fast becoming the twin scourges of the wasteland that our interpersonal relationships had become. So, narcissists and psychopaths thrive in postmodern contemporary society. Narcissistic and egocentric patterns of behavior have become normative, have become the norm. I mentioned, of course, autoerotism, and it's very important to realize the solipsism of the narcissist. Even when it comes to sex, the narcissist is always alone, always embedded in a fantastic space which is exclusive. It precludes other people. It excludes other people. And within this fantastic space, within this paracosm, the narcissist is his own or her own lover. The narcissist is the sole sexual object. The intrusion of the other into the paracosm, into the fantastic space, is not perceived as laudatory or desirable. It's perceived as an invasion. That's why the need to convert the other into a masturbatory aid, a sex toy, a sex slave, an object, in order not to challenge the narcissist's unique position within the sexual fantasy. The narcissist is his or her own paramour, own lover, and therefore the narcissist would be jealous of anyone else who strives to attain this position. The narcissist would compete actually with his or her sexual partner. The narcissist is emotionally and sexually attached, bonded, and sexually interacts with himself or herself. Think of it as a split personality. The narcissist, when it comes to sex, is two people, not one. He makes love to himself or to herself, and then someone else enters the picture, and there's a triangle. There is a form of triangulation. There's a form of competition. There is the feeling of infidelity to some extent. And the narcissist rejects the invader, not necessarily by expelling her from the fantastic space, from this paradise, but by converting her into an inanimate instrument or tool of gratification. Now, in the scholarly literature, there's a big number of articles regarding narcissistic or at the very least egotistic patterns of behavior. And the overall umbrella term is sexual narcissism. Sexual narcissism is one type of somatic narcissism. To remind you, somatic narcissism is when the narcissist leverages his or her body in order to obtain narcissistic supply. And there are many ways to leverage the body, sexuality being one of them. Muscle building is another example. There are many ways. And so sexual narcissism is a form of somatic narcissism. And it's been observed not only in narcissistic personality disorder, but also in borderline personalities, in histrionic personality disorder, and so on. And of course, in psychopathy. These individuals use their bodies to self-regulate. They use their bodies to obtain external regulation. The narcissist uses, the somatic narcissist uses his or her body to obtain adulation and admiration or sexual conquest, and this serves to regulate the internal environment, the sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-concept, self-image. The borderline uses such overt sexuality, again, in order to regulate herself. So what the emphasis is on when the narcissist uses other people in sexual settings in order to regulate his sense of self-worth, the emphasis and the focus is on himself, not on these other people. These other people are incidental. They just happen to be there. They're instruments and tools, like service providers. And that's why autoerotism and external regulation are the opposite or preclude intimacy. And all these types of individuals have intimacy issues. They are prone to behaviors which destroy intimacy. For example, infidelity. And this leads to a lot of distress in their relationships, including their sexual relationships. This distress has been linked to neuroticism and insecure attachment styles. And they're very, very common, for example, in vulnerable types of narcissism, in what is known as covert narcissism or fragile narcissism. Now, to remind you, every narcissist goes through overt and covert phases, but there are dominant types. The narcissist could be dominantly overt, albeit with covert phases in the lifespan, and vice versa. Narcissists who are predominantly covert would tend to experience relationship distress and to display neurotic responses because of the problems they have with intimacy. And overt narcissists would not experience relationship distress, but they would experience relationship failures precisely for the same reasons. Sexual narcissism is an egocentric pattern of sexual behavior characterized by sexual exploitation, sexual entitlement, sexual skills, and low sexual empathy. So the higher the level of narcissism, the higher the levels of need for agency within relationships. In other words, agency is intimately linked with narcissism, or the need for agency is intimately linked with narcissism. And when you are narcissistic or when you are a narcissist, you would compete within the relationship for power, for status, for intelligence, for attractiveness. There would be a relative positioning contest. The relationship would be competitive. And of course, all this is not conducive to physiological sexual performance. Men with narcissistic patterns of sexual behavior are often sexually dysfunctional because of this distress. And again, the distress could be as a result of failure of the relationship, or the distress could be as a result of competition in the relationship, but there's always distress because of rejection of fear of intimacy, and this distress is the reason for is somatized. This distress becomes physiological or is expressed physiological through the body and leads to inadequate sexual functioning. I would like to now review or survey some of the literature. Start with an article titled "From Prevention to Promotion in Women's Sexual Self-Perceptions of Efficacy, the Sexual Self-Efficacy Questionnaire, etc." It was written by Ogala Blanco, Lara Moreno, and others. And you have a list of literature in the description You can read the article for yourself. I'll quote from the article because now we need to move further into the psychological etiology of sexual dysfunctioning. When I say sexual malfunctions or sexual dysfunctions, I mean erectile dysfunction, impotence, and premature ejaculation. So a key concept is what is known as sexual self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is people's beliefs regarding their ability to successfully perform an action to achieve desired consequences. It was first defined by Bandura in 1977. Self-efficacy is a strong predictor of behaviors, including those leading to health-related outcomes, according to Lehman and others in 2021. I'm now quoting from the article. Sexual self-efficacy refers to the confidence in one's own ability to make decisions and actions regarding sexuality, particularly when faced with barriers and obstacles, including avoiding high-risk sexual behaviors, for example, having sex after alcohol intake, and performing healthy protective and promotive behaviors to prevent undesired outcomes, for example, using condoms, and also behaviors to enhance positive aspects, such as sexual satisfaction, for example, communicating personal desires. All these together constitute sexual self-efficacy, and it plays a significant role in people's control over their sexual life. It is associated with behaviors and outcomes related to a healthy sexuality, sexual communication, non-risky sexual behaviors, and sexual satisfaction. So this is sexual self-efficacy. Now let's see how this concept is applied in the study of sexual dysfunction in narcissists, in narcissism. So on to the next article, the relationship between erectile dysfunction, sexual self-efficacy, and the dark triad. To remind you, dark triad personalities are not narcissists and they are not psychopaths. They are subclinical narcissists and subclinical psychopaths, but it's good enough an approximation. The article was authored by Banbury, Moneta, Chandler, and others. Here's what they have to say. Erectile dysfunction is the lack or loss of ability to achieve or to maintain an erection, and is a commonly reported sexual dysfunction in healthcare. Whilst research has centered on the dark triad personality and sexuality, association between dark triad traits and sexual dysfunction appear scarce. The results of this study suggested a moderate to high positive correlation with narcissism and psychopathy traits on erectile dysfunction, an aggravating effect, and a negative moderate to high correlation with Machiavellianism and sexual self-efficacy, a protective effect. Strangely, therefore, if you have narcissistic tendencies or psychopathic tendencies, you are more likely to experience erectile dysfunction than if you are merely Machiavellian, a manipulative person, and if you have high sexual self-efficacy, which is not surprising. Both Machiavellianism, specifically subscale reputation, and sexual self-efficacy were predictors of erectile dysfunction. This suggests that higher levels of sexual self-efficacy and higher levels of Machiavellianism, higher Mach, on the reputation subscale were associated with lower levels of erectile dysfunction, and narcissism and psychopathy were associated with higher levels of erectile dysfunction. However, until further research is conducted on a larger and diverse cohort, which examines the causal pathways, sexual self-efficacy and the dark triad do impact erectile dysfunction, but we are not quite sure how and to what extent. Nevertheless, this area warrants further exploration. Another article, authored by Krishnan, Thomas, and others, is titled Sexual Narcissism Among Men with Sexual Dysfunctions, an Exploratory Study. And it says, previous studies have associated sexual narcissism with aggressive behaviors, prevalent among most cluster B populations. Recent evidence shows that certain characteristics of sexual narcissism could be beneficial for sexual and marital satisfaction. The present study is an exploration of the role of narcissism in sexual dysfunctions. The results indicated that beliefs about female sexual power, a helplessness schema, and exploitative behaviors of sexual narcissism were the best predictors that differentiated the two groups. The higher the scores on these variables, the lower the erectile functioning. Female sexual power shared a positive correlation with both exploitation and helplessness, while the latter two variables were unrelated. That's pretty interesting. It seems that even narcissists, when they have a high belief in female sexual power, when they feel helpless, for example, in covert narcissism, and when their behaviors are exploitative, sexually exploitative, they would tend to have a lower incidence and prevalence of erectile dysfunction, while other dimensions and other determinants of pathological sexual narcissism would tend to predict a higher level of erectile dysfunction. Conclusions of the study are a higher need to stick to traditional gender roles and fear of being overpowered could be contributing to sexually exploitative behaviors and relationship distress, which in turn could affect self-efficacy and contribute to sexual dysfunction. Now, the next study is titled Personality and Psychiatric Disorders in Chronic Pain Male Affected by Erectile Dysfunction, Prospective and Observational Study. The authors were Ajo, Mathieu, and others. And it's a very interesting study because it links erectile dysfunction to chronic pain sufferers who are comorbid with personality issues or personality disorders. So we have a group of men, in this particular case, who have personality disorders and also experience chronic pain. And the question is how this combination might affect erectile dysfunction. And here's what the article has to say. The prevalence of personality disorders and sexual dysfunction in chronic pain patients is higher than in the general population. Our main objective was to analyze the influence of personality disorders in patients with erectile dysfunction and chronic non-cancer pain and their response to andrological treatment. So they studied about 100 patients and so on and so forth, and they reached several interesting conclusions. First of all, the profile of the group was pretty special. We're talking about people who are relatively late middle age and even old. 70% of them were sexually active, and many of them presented moderate to severe erectile dysfunction. Personality disorders were very frequent. 31% cutoff, 85 and 84% cutoff, 75 scores. And additionally, they had anxiety, compulsive disorders, somatoform disorders, and narcissistic personality disorder. So, the first thing the study found was that the self-defeating feature presence was significantly correlated with a more severe baseline erectile dysfunction and narcissistic profile, and a better response to treatment. So this deals mainly with covert narcissists. They have a self-defeating or even self-destructive strand in them, and because they're full of resentment and bitterness, and they're very angry at themselves and at the world. And these people are narcissists, of course, and they usually have severe erectile dysfunction. But at the same time, they react well to treatment. Patients with dysthymia features, a constant background depression or dysphoria, required significantly higher doses versus control. So what the study shows is that it's important to diagnose personality disorders in order to rigorously treat patients with chronic pain who are also suffering from sexual dysfunction. It seems that personality disorders are the main determinant. While many people with chronic pain would say, I have an erectile dysfunction because I'm constantly in pain, actually, it's pretty likely that the reason is an underlying or occult hidden personality disorder. It